We're moving on now to our next conversation, and this is a topic that continues to gain currency in our parts of the world. To set the context, is a prominent Ghanaian politician and member of parliament for Damango. His current portfolio as Ghana's Minister for Lands and Natural Resources makes him just the right person to lead this conversation. Please help me welcome the Honorable Minister, Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor.
Honorable Ministers, heads and representatives of regional economic communities, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Executive Chairman of the African Prosperity Network, Acting Chief Executive Officer of African Prosperity Network, conference delegates and participants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am grateful to the organizers of this conference, the African Prosperity Network, and its partners, Office of the President of Ghana, and the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, for once again putting together these dialogues, and for the opportunity to speak on this consequential topic of, quote, extracting greater value from our minerals, the case of gold and lithium in Ghana, end quote. Though in its second year, the African Prosperity Dialogues has obviously become one of the most important and transformational conferences on the continent, aimed at utilizing Africa's untapped potentials and resources to advance economic fortunes and prosperity. Excellencies, we cannot talk about Africa's prosperity without talking about her natural resources, which for years have been the fulcrum around which most of our economies revolve. After years of mining, Africa still holds some 30% of the world's mineral reserves, with large deposits of green and emerging minerals, including 91% of the platinum group of metals, 79% of phosphate rock, 53% of cobalt, 46% of manganese, 35% of chromite, 25% of bauxite, 21% of graphite, 6% of copper, and substantial reserves of lithium, iron ore, and rare earth elements. Regrettably, over the years, the exploitation of these resources has not optimally benefited the African peoples. According to the 2023 Multidimensional Poverty Index report, nearly half of the world's 1.1 billion people live in sub-Saharan Africa. And using the International Monetary Fund's GDP per capita income, 25 out of the 30 poorest countries in the world are in Africa, including countries with large reserves of natural resources. The reason for this unfortunate situation is obvious. Over the years, our natural resources industry has been dominated by foreign interests and the export of raw minerals, denying us of any value addition or linkages to other sectors of the African economy. A 2018 United Nations Economic Commission for Africa study rightly concluded that Africa's underdevelopment, despite the vast deposits of resources, is largely due to failure to attract sufficient investment in other diversified activities along the value chain of our resources and our overdependence on the export of raw materials. In my country, Ghana, for instance, despite mining gold for over a century, and despite being the leading producer of gold on the continent, we still lack refineries to refine this precious mineral. And even though we boast of the second largest smelter in sub-Saharan Africa, the Volta Aluminium Company, VALCO, we have to export our bauxite resources in their raw state and import alumina, which is refined bauxite, for VALCO to smelt into aluminium. This is certainly a sorry story. But this story is not different from other parts of the continent. For example, Democratic Republic of Congo, which holds the largest reserves of cobalt, estimated at 51% of global cobalt reserves, export the raw ore or its concentrate. And Zimbabwe, which holds Africa's largest lithium reserves and ranked 6th globally, export raw lithium ore. Yet, Bloomberg estimates that the global lithium industry at the mining stage is about 11 billion United States dollars, but the value of the industry at the highest end is over 7 trillion US dollars. Unsurprisingly, therefore, African countries involved in the exploitation of lithium are said to be making a paltry 10 to 15% of this trillion-dollar industry. Distinguished guests, there is no better time than now to interrogate this subject, particularly as the world transitions to green energy, with lithium and other green minerals becoming critical for this transition. The theme for this conference, quote, "Delivering Prosperity in Africa, Produce, Add Value and Trade," end quote, is therefore apt, and I have absolute confidence that the panelists for this discussion on, quote, "Extracting greater value from our minerals," end quote, will prefer recommendations that will ensure that the exploitation of our natural resources delivers prosperity for the African peoples. But before I yield to the moderator and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to share some brief thoughts on this seminal topic. There are two fundamentals that are sine qua non to extracting greater value from our mineral resources. Firstly, value addition. We cannot transform our economies if we continue to dig and ship. That is why, since assuming office in 2017, Ghana's President Akufo-Addo has been working to ensure that we add value to our mineral resources. Today, for the first time in our country, government has established, through a public-private partnership, a 400-kilogram gold refinery to refine the gold we produce, and we are working to secure a London Bullion Market Association LBMA certification. The Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, GIADEC, and the Ghana Integrated Iron and Steel Development Corporation, GISDEC, which we established in 2018 and 2019 respectively, have been working to promote and develop integrated aluminum and iron and steel industries, from exploration through refining to downstream production. And work is far advanced for the commencement of the construction of a 450 million United States dollars manganese refinery here in Ghana. Secondly, is indigenous participation. To derive optimal benefit from our natural resources, African peoples must participate fully across the entire value chain of the industry. Our peoples must have equity in the companies involved in the exploration, production, and processing of our mineral resources. It is for this reason that the government of Ghana is working with the Ghana Chamber of Mines to ensure that large-scale mining companies operating in our country list on the Ghana Stock Exchange to enable Ghanaians acquire shares in these companies. We have also enacted the Minerals and Mining Local Content and Local Participation Regulations 2020, LI 2431, to promote local content in the mining industry. Pursuant to this law, we have increased the items on the local procurement list of goods and services reserved for Ghanaians from 29 to 50, retaining here in our country some 3 billion United States dollars annually, which would have otherwise been exported. Ladies and gentlemen, needless to point out that across the globe, wherever natural resources have benefited countries and its citizens, whether in Canada, Australia, or China, it has been hinged on these two fundamentals. We must therefore pursue value addition and indigenous participation in the exploitation of our natural resources with utmost vigor, resilience, and resolution. That is why President Akufo-Addo insisted that we develop a policy for the exploitation and management of our green minerals. And without that, no lease should be granted for these exploitation. Consequently, we have developed a policy which provides for a minimum of 30% indigenous participation, a strict requirement to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange, enhanced local content, increased royalties, and mandatory establishment of a refinery to ensure that we do not, under any circumstances, export our green minerals in their raw state. It is on this basis that last year we signed our first lithium mining lease, which, in addition to the above, also provides for 1% growth and sustainability levy and an additional 1% community development fund. We are aware of the challenges associated with building an end-to-end lithium battery industry with advanced mining countries like Australia, which accounts for over 43% of global lithium production, exporting over 90% of their lithium spodumene to China, the only country with an end-to-end industry. But we are poised here in Ghana to retain as much as practicable a significant amount of the value in our country to ensure that we construct linkages to other sectors of our national economy. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, if Africa will benefit from its natural resources, particularly in the wake of the emerging critical minerals, we must adopt a common position on the exploitation and management of these minerals. It is self-defeating to have a situation where one country is insisting on value addition, indigenous participation, and enhanced fiscal benefits, while another is opening its doors to companies to extract and export these minerals in their raw state. Working together under the auspices of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, we can have the bargaining power to insist on the twin prerequisites of value addition and indigenous participation. Africa can and must benefit from her mineral resources, but it requires concerted efforts and the commitment of all. It requires policies and strategies that not only ensure that we mine sustainably, but also add value to what we mine. It requires policies and strategies that will promote intra-African trade for our mineral resources to retain the value of these minerals in continent. We are enjoined by the African mining vision to use the exploitation of our mineral resources to underpin broad-based sustainable growth and economic development. Let this dialogue, therefore, serve as a clarion call for us all, governments, private sector, civil society organizations, and academia, to work together and leverage on our mineral resources to propel resource-based industrialization for the development of our countries, thereby unleashing the much-needed prosperity for the long-suffering peoples of Africa and secure their well-being. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Samuel Abu Jinapor.